Om Jnanatimirandasya
Om Jnanatimirandasya
Gyananjana Shalakaya
Gyananjana Salakaya
Chakshurunmilitam Yena
Chakshurunmilitam Yena
Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam
Sri Caitanya Manobishtam
Stapitam Yena Bhutale
Stapitam Yena Bhutale
Swayam Rupa Kadamayam
Swayam Rupa Kadamayam
Dadati Swapadantikam
Tadati Swapadantikam
Vandeham Shri Guru
Vandeham Shri Guru
Shri Yuta Padakamalam
Shri Yuta Padakamalam
Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha
Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha
Shri Rupam Sagrajatam
Shri Rupam Sagrajatam
Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam
Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam
Sadvetam Savadutam
Sadvetam Savadutam
Parijana Sahitam
Harijana Sahitam
Krishna Chaitanya Devam
Krishna Chaitanya Devam
Shri Radha Krishna Padam
Shri Radha Krishna Padam
Sahagana Lalita
Sahagana Lalita
Shri Vishakanvitamscha
Shri Visakanvitamscha
He Krishna Karuna Sindhu
He Krishna Karuna Sindhu
Dinabandhu Jagapate
Dinabandho Jagatpate
Gopisha Gopika Kanta
Gopisha Gopika Kanta
Radha Kanta Namostute
Radha Kanta Namostute
Tapta Kanchana Gorenge
Tapta Kanchana Gorangi
Radhe Vrindavaneshwari
Radhe Vrindavaneshwari
Vrishabhanu Sute Devi
Vrishabhanu Sute Devi
Pranamami Hari Priye
Pranamami Hari Priye
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha
Kripa Sindhobhyo Evacha
Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha
Patitanam Pavanebhyo
Patitanam Pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha
Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha
Namo Vishnupadaya
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya
Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale
Krishna Prestaya Bhutale
Srimati Bhakti Vedanta
Srimati Bhakti Vedanta
Swami Niti Namine
Swaminiti Namine
Namaste Saraswati Devi
Namaste Saraswati Devi
Gauravani Pracharine
Gauravani Pracharine
Virsesha Sunyavadi
Nirvisesa Sunyavari
Askachade Satarine
Vastuchare Jatarine
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda
Prabhu Nityananda
Shri Advaita Gadadara
Shri Advaita Gadadhara
Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
Hare Rama Hare Rama
Hare Rama Hare Rama
Rama Rama Hare Hare
Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna. Great. So we'll be finishing chapter 3, or continuing with chapter 3, which is entitled A Very Nice Saintly Person. And I believe Srila Prabhupada just met his spiritual master.
Yes.
Great.
Shall I start?
If you'd like to, yeah.
In 1923, Abai and his wife and child moved to Allahabad, a 12-hour train ride northwest from Calcutta. The British had once made Allahabad the capital of the United Provinces, and they had built many good buildings there, including buildings for a high court and a university. Europeans and affluent Indian families like the Nehrus lived in a modern, paved, well-lit section of town. There was also another, older section, with ancient narrow streets closely lined with buildings and shops. Many Bengalis resided there, and it was there that Abai decided to settle his family. He had chosen Allahabad, traditionally known as Prayag, as a good location for business, but it was also one of India's most famous places of pilgrimage. Situated at the confluence of the three holiest rivers of India, the Ganges, the Yamuna, and the Saraswati, Allahabad was the site of two of India's most widely attended spiritual events, the annual Magha Mela and the Kumbh Mela, which took place every 12 years. And in search of spiritual purification, millions of pilgrims from all over India would converge here each year at the time of the full moon in the month of Magha, January, and bathe at the junction of the three sacred rivers. Abai's home at 60 Badshahi Mundi consisted of a few rented rooms. For his business, he rented a small shop in the commercial centre of the city at Johnston Gung Road, where he opened his dispensary, Prayag Pharmacy, and began selling medicines, tinctures, syrups, and other products manufactured by Bose's laboratory. He met in Allahabad physician Dr. Ghosh, who was interested in a business partnership, so Abai asked him to become his attending physician and move his office to Prayag Pharmacy. Dr. Ghosh consented and closed his own shop, Tropical Pharmacy. At Prayag Pharmacy, Dr. Ghosh would diagnose patients and give medical prescriptions, which Abai would fill. Dr. Ghosh would then receive a 25% commission from the sale of the prescriptions. Abai and Dr. Ghosh became friends. They would visit at each other's home, and they treated each other's children like their own family members. Often they discussed their aspirations for increasing profits. Dr. Ghosh: Abai was a business-minded man. We were all God-fearing, of course. In every home we have a small temple, and we must have deities. But he used to always talk about business and how to meet family expenses. Although at home Abai wore a kurta and dhoti, sometimes for business he would dress in shirt and pants. He was a good-looking, full-moustached, energetic young man in his late 20s. He and Radharani Dey now had 2 children. A daughter was born after they had been in Allahabad for 1 year. Gaur Mohan, who was now 75, had come to live with him, as had Abai's widowed sister Rajeshwari and her son Tulsi. Gaur Mohan mostly stayed at home, chanted on his beads, and worshipped the Shalagram Shila deity of Krishna. He was satisfied that Abai was doing right, and Abai was satisfied to have his father living comfortably with him and freely worshipping Krishna. Abai led a busy life. He was intent on building his business. By 8 a.m. he would go to his pharmacy, where he would meet Dr. Ghosh and begin his day's work. At noon he would come home, and then he would return to the pharmacy in the late afternoon. He had purchased a large Buick for 8,000 rupees, and although he never drove it himself, he let his nephew, a good driver, use it for his taxi business. Occasionally, Abai would use the car on his own business excursions, and his nephew would then act as his chauffeur. It so happened that both Motilal Nehru and his son Jawaharlal were customers at Prayag Pharmacy. Because Jawaharlal would always order Western medicines, Abai thought he must have felt that Indian ways were inferior. Once, Jawaharlal approached Abai for a political contribution, and Abai donated, being a conscientious merchant. During the day, Abai would talk with his customers and other friends who would stop by, and they would tell him many things. A former military officer used to tell Abai stories of World War I. He told how Marshal Foch in France had one day ordered the killings of thousands of Belgian refugees whose maintenance had become a burden to him on the battlefield. A Mohammedan gentleman, a member of a royal family in Afghanistan, would come daily with his son to sit and chat. Abai would listen to his visitors and converse pleasantly and make up their prescriptions, but his thoughts kept returning to his meeting with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He went over it again and again in his mind, how he had looked, his mannerisms, what he had said. At night, Abai would go home to his wife and children. Radharani was a chaste and faithful wife who spent her days cooking, cleaning, and caring for her two children, but she was not inclined to share her husband's interest in things spiritual. He could not convey to her his feelings about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati.
Abai, his wife, their two children, Gaur Mohan, Abai's younger brother Krishna Charan, Abai's widowed sister Rajeshwari, and her son Tulsi Das all went together to an Allahabad studio for a family portrait. The photo shows Abai in his late 20s. He is thin and dark with a full moustache. His forehead is broad, his eyes dark and clear. He wears a white kurta and dhoti and plain dark slippers. He sits in a chair, his wife standing behind him, an attractive young woman in a white khadi sari with a line of colour on the border. Her slim arms rest behind Abai's head on the back of his chair, her small hand gripping the edge of the chair. Her left hand hangs by her side, gripped in a fist. She is barefoot. With his left hand, Abai steadies his 2-year-old boy, Pacha Prayagraj, a glaring infant, on his lap, the boy seeming to squirm, his baby legs and bare feet dangling by his mother's knee. Abai seems a bit amused by the son on his lap. Abai is a handsome Indian man, his wife an attractive woman, both young. Also behind Abai stands his nephew Tulsi and his brother Krishna Charan. Sitting on the far right is Abai's sister Rajeshwari, dressed in a widow's white sari, holding Sulakshmana, Abai's daughter, on her lap. Sulakshman is also squirming, her foot jutting towards the photographer. In the centre sits Gaur Mohan. His face is shriveled and his whole body is emaciated with age. He's also wearing a white kurta and dhoti. His hands seem to be moving actively on his lap, perhaps with palsy. He is short and small and old. I don't know if anyone. Kavi, would you like to read?
Yeah, sure. Abai traveled frequently throughout northern India. Intent on expanding his sales, it was not unusual for him to be gone a few days in a week, and sometimes a week or more at a time as he traveled from one city to another. The pharmaceutical industry was just beginning in India, and doctors, hospitals, and pharmacies were eager to buy from the competent gentlemanly agent who called on them from Bose Laboratory of Kolkata. He would travel by train and stay in hotels. He liked the feeling of freedom from home that traveling afforded, but the real drive was servicing accounts and getting new ones. That was his business. Riding in a third-class unreserved compartment was often uncomfortable. The only seats were benches, which were often dirty, and passengers were permitted to crowd on without reservations. But that is how Abai travelled. Hundreds of miles every week. As the train moved between towns, he would see the numberless small villages and then the country land that spread out before him on either side of the tracks. At every stop, he would hear the cries of the tea vendors as they walked alongside the train windows. Chai tea, the British had introduced it. and now millions of Indians were convinced that they could not get through the morning without their little glass of hot tea. As a strict Vaishnava, Abai never touched it, but his wife, much to displeasure, was becoming a regular tea drinker. Although Abe was accustomed to dressing as a European businessman, he never compromised his strict Vaishnava principles. Most of his fellow Bengalis had taken up fish eating, but Abe was always careful to avoid non-Vaishnava foods, even at hotels. Once a vegetarian hotel, the Empire Hindu Hotel in Bombay, he was served onions, and sometimes hotel people tried to serve him mushrooms, garlic, and even eggs. But all of these he carefully avoided, keeping a small semblance of his home routine. He would take his bath early in the morning with cold water. He followed this routine year round, and when in Sahabanpur he did so during the bitter cold weather, the hotel keeper was greatly surprised. Abe conversed with many people in his travels. A doctor in Dhaka told him that on his way to the office he had passed a farmer talking to a friend, and could tell by the sound of the farmer's cough that the farmer would die within a few hours. Another doctor told Abe that he had just come from seeing a pneumonia patient who was defying nature and medical science by continuing to live. He met a doctor in Gaya who lamented that he had just lost a patient, although he had given the man the very best medicine. Such accounts from men of the medical profession confirmed Abe's conviction that without God's sanction, no one could be saved. Not that I ever thought of his medical sales as philanthropic work. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had already convinced him that the only way to save a person was by giving him Krishna consciousness. Abe's medical products were strictly for business. On one business trip, it was in 1925, he traveled through Agra, only 40 miles south of Vrindavan. Taking the opportunity, he made his first visit to holy Vrindavan, fulfilling his childhood aspiration. He loved the sight of Vrindavan, but he could spend only a day or two. Even a single day away from his sales work could be critical as a reverent pilgrim. Abe visited a few temples, especially the principal temples, established by the followers of the Lord Caitanya, but he had to move on. There were also risks in traveling. Once he was sitting in a train compartment in Madura station when a monkey suddenly entered and took away his belongings. Early one morning before dawn, while he was on his way to Kanpur in a two-wheeled horse carriage, the horse was going at a fast trot when suddenly it hit a large heap of rubbish in the middle of the road. The carriage turned upside down. Horse, driver, and carriage all landed in a heap, and Abe was thrown into the air, but he landed unharmed, feeling as though he had just changed to another seat. Because Abe sat but said nothing, the driver thought he had been knocked unconscious and became anxious. The passenger was all right, however, and the driver considered it a miracle, since the chart had so violently ejected him. Abe took it that he had been saved by Krishna and remembered similar incidents, starting with his childhood when his clothing had caught on fire. Krishna had always protected him. For 5 years, Abe traveled widely out of Allahabad, and when he was home, he put in long hours at dispensary, but he also spent time with his wife and played with his children. Sri Prabhupada, when my son was about 2 years old, he was very naughty, always doing mischief. My friends used to visit me and call my son, Pacha. Pacha, if you sit down for 1 minute silently, I'll give you a gift. But the boy failed. He could not sit down even for a minute. There was a table fan, and Pacha was wanting to touch it. I said, no, no, don't touch. But again, he tried to touch it. So my friend said, just lower the speed and let him touch it. So I unplugged the fan, and then he touched it. It did not harm him, but it hit his finger with a loud noise tongue, and then he would not touch again. I would ask him touch again, but he would not. As soon as his daughter Sushmana could speak, he began teaching her the Bengali translation of the prayer Guru Astakam, which begins, the spiritual master receiving benedictions from the ocean of mercy. Just as a cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it, the spiritual master extinguishes the blazing fire of material life of repeated birth and death. Except for his obligatory travels, Abhay stayed at home and satisfied his family. He tended diligently to his business, and it prospered. Would anyone else like to read?
Yeah, I'll have a go. So, it was Kumbh Mela, January 1928. Bhakti Pradeep Tirtha Maharaj of the Gaudiya Mat had come to Allahabad with a few men. One day he walked unannounced into the Prayag pharmacy, and all of a sudden Abhay was seeing them again after so many years. Oh, these are the people I saw before, he thought. Gaudiya Mat, yes, come in. Bhakti Pradeep Tirtha Swami was the same sannyas who had visited Narendranath Mullik in Calcutta, a visit that had led to Abhay's going to visit Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Folding his palms in a humble gesture, standing before Abhay in a simple saffron khadi robes, his shaven head with a tuft of sikha in the back, his forehead marked with Vaishnav tilak, Tirtha Maharaj said to Abhay, "We are new here. We are going to establish a temple in Allahabad. We have heard your name, so we have come to you. Please help us." Abhay was joyful. Yes, I will help you. He contributed what money he could and then introduced Tirtha Maharaj to Dr. Ghosh, who also contributed. Abhay invited the Gaudiya Mat devotees to come to his home and hold a bhajan and lecture. His wife would cook prasadam. They accepted, but when they arrived, there was a misunderstanding. Gormohan, who was invalid, was staying in his room upstairs. "Please come down," Abhay called. "There's a meeting of the Gaudiya Mat." Gormohan came downstairs, but when he saw the sadhus, he mistook them for impersonalists from a non-devotional mission. He had not heard correctly what Abhay had said. Gormohan took his seat, but he observed the saffron-clothed men sullenly, and he even made a critical remark. Abhay, who was enlivened at the opportunity to associate with the Vaishnavas and hear from them Krishna Katha, could not understand his father's behaviour. Then, as soon as Bhakti Pradeep Tirtha Swami began his lecture, Gormohan understood. "Oh, they are Vaishnavas," he cried. Old and invalid as he was, he immediately fell down at their feet. "I misunderstood you, sir. I thought you were sannyasis from another mission. I am glad to meet you." After Kumbh Mela, Pradeep Tirtha Swami left, but 5 or 6 brahmachari disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati stayed on in Allahabad, maintaining a small mat headquarters. They worshipped the deity, held an evening program of kirtan and lecture, and preached actively to the local people. The devotee in charge, Atulananda Brahmachari, would visit the homes of Allahabad citizens, trying to solicit subscriber members for the mat. For half a rupee per month, the person would receive a subscription to the Gaudiya Mat magazine. In the course of his door-to-door soliciting, Atulananda knocked on the door of Abhay Charande. Abhay received him very hospitably and offered him some rice and fruit. Abhay was very receptive to the philosophy and relished discussions with Atulananda, who made it a point to visit Mr. Day repeatedly and speak with him about Lord Caitanya and the Bhagavad Gita. Abhay also inquired into the recent activities of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. By now, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had established the Gaudiya printing works in Calcutta and had begun to publish the Srimad Bhagavatam in several volumes with his own annotations. He had also published an edited version of Sri Caitanya Bhagavat from his centre in Dhaka. He had opened centres in Bhubaneswar, Madras, and Puri. Abhay's interest was insatiable. Atulananda told him how, in 1925, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had led a big procession circumambulating the holy land of Navadvip, with deities riding on the backs of gorgeously decorated elephants, and with devotees from all parts of India attending. Envious professional priests who opposed Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's acceptance of disciples from all castes had employed a gang to help them hurl bricks and rocks on the procession, but Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had continued undaunted. In 1926, he had toured throughout India, preaching the message of Lord Caitanya. He had also installed deities in the large temple of Sri Caitanya Mat in Mayapur, and a year ago he had begun publishing his magazine, Sajjana Toshani, in 3 languages, including an English edition called The Harmonist. After several visits and hours of discussion on the activities and philosophy of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Atulananda brought Mr. Day to the Allahabad ashram. Shortly thereafter, the Mat relocated to a rented house on South Malacca Street near Rambagh, just a short walk from Abhai's house. Now it was possible for Abhai to visit every evening. After work, he would attend the Mat, where he would play the mridanga, surprising the brahmacharis with his already developed mridanga playing skills. He sang bhajans with them, and sometimes took the lead part in the congregational singing. He would also bring important persons from Allahabad to visit the Mat. For the brahmacharis, Abhai seemed to give new life to their ashram, and for Abhai, new life had come to him in his reunion with the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Good place to pause. Swap over.
Great. In 1930, Gaur Mohan's health took a turn for the worse, and his family members gathered around him, thinking that his end had come. Abhai had been in Bombay on business, and it was late when he reached Allahabad and knocked on the door. Gaur Mohan told his daughter Rajeshwari, "Open the door, Abhai has come." She replied, "No, he is in Bombay." Gaur Mohan repeated, "I tell you that he has come. You open the door." It was about midnight. She went downstairs, opened the door, and found that her brother had indeed come. Abhai went to his father. "How are you?" "I'm all right," Gaur Mohan replied. "You just take rest for the night." The next morning, Abhai called the doctor. "How your father is living, we don't know," the doctor told him. "He has practically no pulse. He has been living without food for several months." Abhai asked his father, "What is your wish? Tell me." "Why are you asking?" his father replied. "Has the doctor told you anything?" Abhai said, "No. I am asking because I am staying in Bombay and you are here. So if you have any wish, any intention, let me know. I'm here. I'm here for you." Gaur Mohan told him to give their cow to the Allahabad Gaudiya Mat. So Abhai took the cow along with her calf and donated them to the Mat. Then again he asked his father, "Have you got any other wish?" And again his father asked, "Has the doctor told you anything?" No, I'm simply asking because for my business I have to go." Then Gaur Mohan said, "Invite all the Gaudiya Vaishnavas of Allahabad and other Vaishnavas also. Let them chant Hare Nam in the evening and you supply them with good food. That is my wish." Abhai arranged it, and in the evening the Hare Nam started. At 11 o'clock, all of them took prasadam and left. That night, Gaur Mohan passed away. Abhai felt the loss of his father painfully. His father had given him everything he had ever wanted, had been careful to raise him as a pure Vaishnava, and had always worshipped Radha and Krishna. Although Abhai was a competent young man, he felt lost without his dearmost protector and friend. More than anyone else, Gaur Mohan was the one who had always guided Abhai and treated him as the most special person. Without his father, Abhai now felt hopeless. He suddenly felt the same dependency he had felt as a small boy, but now without his father. The one who had always treated him as a pet son, deserving all loving attention, the one who had given him whatever he had wanted, and who had literally prayed to every holy man he met that his son become a great devotee of Srimati Radharani. That best well-wisher was now gone. On the day of Shraddha, 13 days after Gaur Mohan passed away, Abai and his brother posed for a formal photograph. In accordance with the religious custom, the two sons had shaved their heads. The photograph shows Abai and his brother sitting on either side of a formal portrait of their father. The portrait is on an elevated stand and is surrounded with dark cloth. The picture is nicely framed. Gaur Mohan looks old, but still thoughtful and intent. Not so old as in the former portrait, where he looked emaciated, with eyes almost dimmed. Abai, with his head shaved, looks like a renounced monk, and his body is covered with the robes of a monk, simple drapes in broad folds covering the upper and lower parts of his body. It looks quite different than he had in the picture that was taken in the same place with the same rough carpet on the floor years before. In that picture, with his wife and children gathered around him, he was very much the young householder, surrounded by his responsibilities of family and looking like he knew how to conduct himself well and move energetically in the world. But in this photo, although his children are present, they are seated unattended on the floor. Abai's left hand is on his knee, poised and yet at rest, whereas in the former picture, his left hand had been holding his restless son. Abai's wife is not present.
In this picture, Abai looks striking. One cannot tell that he usually has a head of hair and a moustache, which he has only recently shorn for the mournful observance of his father's passing away. Instead, this seems to be his natural appearance. There is a mysterious, spiritual air about him, as one might expect in a meditating saint. His look is neither agitated nor cheerful nor sorrowful. It is peaceful and knowing, as if he has suddenly become a sadhu on the day his father has passed away. He looks like the sadhu his father envisioned he would become. He looks as if he is, and always was, a sadhu, and has suddenly been revealed as such on this day. Even by the most casual inspection of the photo, it appears that by shaving his head and dressing in robes with no shirt or shoes, Abai has become a sadhu.
Hare Krishna. That brings us to the end of chapter 3. So, if any amongst the sadhus present has any comments or reflections, please enlighten us.
It's just nice to see how he's growing up, like from the previous chapters, and now he's starting to realize there's more. He's started work. He's doing like all these little things, and by doing all these little things, he's kind of becoming a better person, and his realization is becoming much more. So yeah, it's quite nice to see through the chapters. It's like we're seeing him grow up.
Yeah, it's quite an amazing thing actually, because usually, you come into contact with like spiritual life's personal. So, you know, and you cultivate a relationship with Krishna through the guru. I actually saw one Darren, a devotee, posted on Facebook. He said, if you want to know Krishna, first you get to know his devotee. So when you have a pure devotee like Prabhupada, the more you get to know him, the more you get to know Krishna. So having this sort of intimate, personal sort of portrait of Prabhupada, he's going through all these life changes that we all have to go through. It's actually very sweet. Yeah, it's very nice. One thing that stuck out to me was we had kirtan here last night in Canterbury, and we had 2 devotees from London came.
Yeah, and then Jake came.
And another devotee from Whitstable, just down the road. He came. He's been here for a while, but he's not been to a program yet. And then a couple of devotees, or a family of 4, 2 young children. they moved nearby to Ashford, about half an hour away. And so they came. So there were probably like 10 or 12 of us or something in the park, and we were chanting. And then afterwards we came to our apartment, to our place, to the bunker here. And we just had sort of like some tea and snacks, you know, and just sort of just spent time together. And so I was reminded reading that about how important association is. Prabhupada's working and he's supporting his family, and those things are good, and he's doing it well. He's very careful to do it properly and so on. But as I was reading it, this is just what I got anyway, there was a certain spark that sort of happened when the devotees from his godbrothers come.
You said it felt like you gave him life.
Yeah, and he gave them life.
Yeah, it's like a reciprocal.
Yeah, and I thought that was really significant, that there's like, he's going through life, which we all have to do, and he's kind of showing us how to do that, you know, in one sense. But then there's a spark, things start, you know, there's something special that happens, right, when the devotees are present and together. So that principle of having the association of devotees is actually very important in one form or another. When it's there. I mean, how many of us have felt like that at some point? Hema was just saying it last night. She was just like, yeah, I forgot that sort of it, because lockdowns, you know, she was like, oh yeah, you're just supposed to be with devotees, you know. You're just supposed to be, you know, and when you're with devotees, it's really easy to think of Krishna and to be Krishna conscious, and it's also very purifying, because when you're around devotees, you have to, you know, drop your false ego and
rubs off your sharp edges.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was powerful. As soon as the devotees turned up, he sort of, this extra sparkle starts to come.
I also thought it was really nice that he got the chance to serve his dad at the end like that and fulfill his wishes, and also just that his wishes were like, okay, donate the cows to the Gaudiya mat and invite them here for kirtan and prasadam, and that Prabhupada got to do that at the end.
Yeah, and very simple.
Yeah.
Like obviously, if your son is Srila Prabhupada, you're a very elevated soul, right? You know what I mean? Like you might, if your son, so he's, you know, his father, and obviously he's brought Prabhupada. He's obviously, you know, pure Vaishnava. But there was no big, simply he just gave in charity, you know, what he had, and he arranged to feed the devotees and have Harinam. Very simple and kind of humble, but like obviously very powerful, and then he passed away. Yeah, very deep, yeah. Wasn't anything kind of extravagant or, you know, dark clouds didn't gather, or, you know, whatever it is, of some big rainbow. It was just simple. No, you know, it was just very nice, cultured, sort of devotional.
So for devotees.
Yeah, it's like spiritual, devotional, cultural practices that are actually, like, yeah, like you said, very deep. Yeah. Oh.
Anything else?
Yeah, actually, one other thing stuck out to me.
Yeah.
When Bhaktisiddhanta's going on that parikrama of Navadvip.
Oh, they were throwing bricks.
People are throwing bricks at him.
He just kept going.
Far out. Totally wild. One time we should probably read that. I think Bhakti Vikaswami wrote a book about the life and teachings of Bhaktisiddhanta.
Okay.
Anyway, there's many books about him as far as I know. But he's an amazing personality. And again, when you hear about him, like father, like son, right? Like, you know, you've got your physical father and your guru is your spiritual father, sort of thing. And So when you hear about Bhaktisiddhanta, you see, it's like the apple doesn't fall so far from the tree, you know, with Prabhupada, that he had to tolerate so much from, not actually just from the Western countries that he went to, but even from people within India, even though he was, you know, envious people that saw what he was doing. And then he was coming back, having had so much success in helping people to practice and to kind of like revive this spiritual culture. He still got a lot of flack, and he just carried on. Amazing image, right? Big elephants of deities, you know, and people hurling bricks. That's really heavy.
Yeah.
Like we've just been seeing in the news here, I forget where it was, but they were having some riots, and the army got sent in. This is what we're hearing on Facebook anyway. The army got sent in, and then like people are reporting from their bedroom window, they're seeing like rioters being like dragged off the street and, you know, whatever, taken away and stuff. And Hema was just saying, imagine if that was happening, because we live quite centrally. So she was saying, imagine that happening in Canterbury or in Harrow, or, you know, anywhere that you are.
I think it's easy to read something like that, or like here, you know, they were throwing bricks, and you just sort of read past it.
Yeah.
But actually, if you actually think about if you were there, what that would be like.
It's really heavy.
It's very heavy.
Big elephants, like just like loads of people come in, and this angry mob start throwing bricks and stuff, and it's like, and you're in a holy place, and the people throwing the bricks are the priest film, or they employed somebody else. I think
they employed a gang.
Anyway, it's heavy, really heavy. And then there's that decision, you know, actually, no, we're going to carry on doing this. You know, Prabhupada was persecuted like that. People were trying to abduct devotees and deprogram them, and all sorts of crazy stuff going on. And fearless. His name's Abai. It's fearless. Yeah, that really stuck out. That's the kind of thing that if this was made into a movie, that would be a big scene, right? They'd make a brilliant scene out of that if you actually filmed it. Elephants and bricks getting thrown. Yeah. Great. Don't know if anyone else wanted to drop any.
Well, I would just like to reiterate that I'm really enjoying this class. Originally, 20 years, well, I don't know, 15 years ago, whenever it was, I think the Lilamrta was in like five volumes, and Tribungananda gave me like volume 3. It was like when Prabhupada had come to America, so it was like from there. So this is the first time I'm really reading properly from the beginning. I obviously heard in classes for little pastimes here and there, but yeah, I think maybe, I don't know, Krishna's kind of seeing that I'm getting to a nice level, so I'm able to appreciate more some of the other pastimes. I don't know. I'm trying to see it philosophically, but there's obviously a reason I'm getting to read it for the first time after so long. So, and what you're saying about association, it's been a main realization of lockdown. You know, lockdown is all about really being locked away and not seeing anyone, but never had better association with all the Zoom meetings, Facebook, and everything, and like seminars, like weekend seminars with devotees, and it's just and also like had to face a few demons with being locked in the same house with my mom, you know, and so and kind of made some real progress there, the kind of stuff that had been festering for years. So again, another positive kind of, and hopefully I can use that being better with people, with my association with devotees, and get proper association instead of like surface, like Harry Bowl, like scurry away. So yeah, so my lockdown realizations.
Brilliant.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I was saying a similar thing actually. Also, I'm so glad that Mahamantra. I know I say it on Wednesday nights all the time, but I'm really glad that that we've ended up associating with each other, getting your association. It's it's great hearing you read and just, you know, just having kind of like having you around sort of, you know, even though it's kind of electronically around, but, you know.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Yeah, but it's been great. It's been really, really sweet. And I know one thing it comes up repeatedly with me is how to associate with devotees. It's like a devotional art of how to be, you know, and learning this kind of culture. I know for me that's something that I'm not so good at, if you know what I mean. Some people are like very expert in these devotional, and you can see like Prabhupada and his father, and they're just so cultured. They're like pure Vaishnav, you know, they're Bengalis brought up with, you know.
Yeah, we're all learning, and from different stages of development or whatever. So.
Yeah. But it's it's definitely something I've sort of become more conscious of, I think, over the last, whatever it is, few months. Probably having not been, or having had that kind of break from actually being in a room with devotees, and then seeing so many last night, I was like, oh, actually, no, there's a way of interacting with them which is really kind of enriching for me if you do it properly. Yeah.
So a bit extended family, you know, getting into the family dynamic, and
It does feel like that very much. So but yeah, I kind of also feel a bit like coming out of a shell.
Yeah.
Because even though I've been out during lockdown and working, I've been very busy. I haven't been stuck at home. I haven't actually seen many people.
No.
I haven't seen many devotees. I've seen, you know, I haven't seen any devotees at all really. So last night was a bit weird. A bit weird, but it made me think, oh, this is actually very, very valuable. And even if I struggle with it, it's really important that I keep doing it, because that's where you make the progress. It's really easy if you stay in your own bubble to not progress, you know. So this morning I had like lots of things in my mind, and you know, there was all this stuff, and I was like, wow, just from being around the devotees, all this purification sort of started taking place. Very powerful. Yeah, and it wasn't because anyone said anything in particular. Nothing, you know. I was just kind of sat in the corner playing Madunga, and that was it. Nothing big happened, you know. But the next morning, you're like, "Wow, man!" It's like, so it's great. Yeah, very
subtle.
Yeah,
powerful and subtle at the same time.
Yeah. It seems the more subtle it gets, the more powerful it feels as well.
Like, the more stronger it is, like, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It's actually, we think it's the other way around.
Yeah.
But actually, subtle is more powerful.
Yeah. And obviously, we're associating with Prabhupada just through hearing about him.
Yeah, reading the book. Yeah.
So powerful.
And with Satsarup.
Yeah, and with Satsarup Maharaj. Yeah. So I'm just desperate for all the Prabhupada's America. I'm loving hearing about India. I'm really loving it. But once he starts preaching,
going to the West,
or even when he starts getting ready to go, just gets to see him in action like that is
special.
Yeah. Jai. Hare Krishna. Great.
Okay.
I tell you one thing I'll do. I'll take pictures of the photographs that were mentioned in this,
put them up.
and I'll put them in the Facebook group in case you don't have the printed book. I'll go back, and I think there were two pictures: one of the family picture and one of him and his brother. Yeah, and then I'll photograph them and I'll stick them in the Facebook group, and everyone can see. Yeah.
Thanks.
Brilliant. Okay. Is this it for the week?
Yeah, we'll be back tomorrow on Facebook.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll try and come for the first half an hour or so. I've got another Zoom meeting at my choir practice, so I'll pop in for half an hour.
Brilliant.
Right.
Okay, we'll see you there. Fantastic. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Haribo.